Okay, now we change the language. Good morning, welcome everybody. The theme of this first session and the panel discussion is Quo Vadis, where are you going? But if you ask Quo Vadis, perhaps you should first ask Unde venis, which means where are you coming from? And I don't intend to go back to ancient Egyptians or even to the invention of the TCP/IP, but just last year, like the Undersecretary of State said, it was a super year of Internet governance, and we had a few memorable headlines. We had Snowden, we had Net Mundial, and of course the future of IANA came to a new stage. Also last year, and this past year actually, the past 12 months, the messages from ICANN, and especially from the CEO and president of ICANN, Fadi Shehadeh, they became louder and louder to the effect that there has to be decentralization both in the functions and the administration of ICANN, that is to say geographical decentralization, globalization. He talked about okay, thank you. Okay now? Yes. A ecosystem-wide coalition, ecosystem-wide cooperation among those entities that manage the Internet. He talked about AOC, the affirmation of commitments with the world, that is to say, not only with the United States as it is now, but actually with the stakeholders of the entire world. And finally, he was also dropping hints about something happening with the IANA contract with the NTIA. Of course, 6th of June, you know what hit the fan, but I think that Snowden was not the starting point for all these changes, but it was a catalysator. It was a catalysator of what followed. And of course, first, it was hard going for all organizations that have to do with the Internet, because people in general, and not even the media, they don't make too many distinctions between ICANN and NSA and IANA and what have you. So it's quite a job actually to explain, even here in Finland, that actually we have nothing to do with that. We just handle the Internet. But and the most visible criticism, of course, came from Dilma Rousseff, the president of Brazil, who used the platform of the United Nations General Assembly to say that the whole thing, the whole governance of the Internet should actually be put on a multilateral basis. Now, multilateral means intergovernmental. That is to say, that should be, as she was saying, multilateral. That would have meant United Nations or ITU managing the Internet. And this was 24th of September. Pretty soon thereafter, there was a meeting of the so-called I organization, or I-STAR organization, which are the organizations, the relevant organizations for managing various technical aspects of the Internet. And that when they meet, usually I understand that there is not much news, but this time there was Montevideo Declaration of all these entities, where they expressed strong concerns over the undermining of trust and confidence of the Internet, and also called for, as it said, called for accelerating the globalization of ICANN and IANA functions. So this was quite news from those technical organizations. Now, Fadi Chehade, the CEO and president of ICANN, participated in the Montevideo meeting, of course, and after that he went straight to Brazil, or Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, got an audience with Dilma Rousseff, explained that actually the governance of the internet should not be multilateral but multi-stakeholder. And the outcome of that meeting was that there should be a meeting, which was first mentioned as it was first called a summit, but then the name was agreed as Net Mundial, and that should take place in Brazil in the spring. Now, a couple of weeks later, Fadi Chehade got some hard sailing in Bali at the Internet Governance Forum, because he was criticized for going it alone, making this sort of agreement with Dilma Rousseff without consulting each and every stakeholder. But eventually, of course, these waves were calmed, and the preparations of the Net Mundial got underway. There were lots of contributions. There was a preparation structure. So when we came to the meeting, it looked like actually being well organized. The assumption was that the Net Mundial would be a stage for a big drama where the United States would be pushed against the wall on the IANA function. And so that it was actually a fine tactical move from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration to announce way before, that is to say 14th of March, to announce that, well, we actually intend to give these functions to a multi-stakeholder entity. The only condition being that it should not be a governmental entity or intergovernmental entity, and that the multi-stakeholder community should decide what kind of entity should take the IANA functions. The Net Mundial, after this announcement, of course, the entire nature of the Net Mundial was different. It was held on the 23rd, 24th of April, and it came, to my mind, to a very good result. The outcome was quite good, and I'm quoting here Milton Muller, who is a professor of the Syracuse University, United States, one of the foremost academic experts in these matters. And what he said is that the most significant content of the Net Mundial is that it repudiates, in a way, the World Summit on Information Society Tunis agenda. Of course, it doesn't have the same status, but still it can be seen as a correction, as an updating to whatever came out from the WSIS 9 years ago. Especially now in the Net Mundial documents, there is a stress on multi-stakeholder thing rather than multilateral, which is the word used in Tunis. Also, there is more flexibility on stakeholder roles, which is important because in Tunis, unfortunately, the resolution or the article said that the international public policy issues of the internet are for governments only, period. Now it's much more flexible. And finally, there was an attempt to break the long deadlock on what is called enhanced cooperation. The thing that was not solved, of course, in Net Mundial was how the IANA function would be handled after this. Now, this is a big discussion. What you see in the picture is the ICANN proposal for that steering group, and lots of discussions with the deadline of September 2015. So this was very briefly what has happened, and now let's go to what will be happening. Thank you very much.
So, okay, thank you, Yrjö. I think that was a good summary of a lot of what has happened in the past 12 months. So let's continue. First, my name is Tero Mustala, and I'm working actually in the network side of Nokia. And one of my duties is to follow what is happening in the area of internet governance and in general here. And next, we continue the super year with a super panel. So I would invite the panelists to come up, and then we start the discussion. All right. Then, if I shortly introduce the panelists and then continue. So first here we have Jari Erkko, who is the chair of the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, so coming from the technical community. Then we have Liesl Frantz from US, from the US government side, who is the senior policy advisor in the office of the coordinator for cyber issues in the US Department of State. Did I get it right? Yeah. Great. And then next one, here we have Jonne Soininen, who is here actually as a role for ICANN, so he is the member, one of the members of the ICANN Board of Directors. And somewhere there is also Juuso Moisander from the Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the other person from the governmental side. And then also, at least we have a serious try to get a connection through the Skype with Janis Karklins, who is nowadays the chairman of the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the Internet Governance Forum. And right now he is still in a meeting for about 5 minutes, and then after that Tommy will make the serious efforts to get the connection working with Janis, but let's see how it goes. I think we could have a bit start with the acronyms, because I feel that Yrjö actually threw a big bunch of different acronyms which are commonly used as we talk about internet governance, and I'm not quite sure if anybody or everybody knows all of those acronyms, what they mean. But if we take just a quick poll, that maybe the most prominent ones are the IETF and ICANN. And if I may ask, who, for example, has been working with the IETF, with the Internet Engineering Task Force? If you can raise your hand so we get some kind of understanding. Thanks. A few. Not too many, but a couple of people. Then this ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Who knows what ICANN is, what it does, who has possibly been in the meetings? Oh, more people than in IETF. That's good. Actually, I would have expected the reverse one. Yeah. Right. So if then we go to the issue and perhaps also try to give some kind of more clarity on these acronyms and these organizations and what they are about and how this super year will continue, because there are actually a lot of different meetings also during this year. And if we go a bit backwards and think about what's this all about, my claim is that this is still the old open question, which is what is the model to govern the Internet issues? Is it multi-stakeholder or is it the old traditional multilateral one, where only the countries, the member states or the governments are those who make the decisions? And there we have the examples, very well-known examples, for example, what happens and what are the practices in the United Nations and in the different groups inside United Nations. Then if we think about the multi-stakeholder approach, so what are the key ingredients of that? And maybe we should first list what are the stakeholder groups. And the normal grouping of that is that it's the technical community, then there is the private sector, meaning businesses, then civil society, which is sometimes also coped with academia, and then the last one is the governments. And these are the groups. And then the main principle actually is that all these groups are in an equal footing or equal position. None of those is above the others. Then the process itself, it should be open, it should be bottom up, and the decisions should actually, or the agreement should be made in some form of consensus. The term rough consensus is very often mentioned. So actually, more or less, no votings. Then one thing to remind is actually that this multi-stakeholder should also work in the different levels, not only in the global level, but also in the regional and in the local level. And one example of that exercise is actually the Internet Governance Forums, the global one, the regional meetings, and then the local meetings like this Finnish Internet Forum right now. So in a way, this is the setup. And now what has actually changed is what actually Yrjö just described, that Snowden, in a way, boosted all the discussion, although the surveillance is actually not an issue of internet governance. It kind of boosted everything what was going on, and there is a more activity all over. And now what we are aiming to look at is actually two issues from this whole wide area, and that is the Internet Governance Forum, the improvements which are actually asked for that, because there is a continuous pressure to get that improved. And then the other detail actually is the transfer of the US oversight of the IANA operations. And we will discuss that a bit more in this panel. So I prepared to start with a set of simple and easy questions for the panelists, so to get in speed, and let's see how it goes on after that. So if I start with Jari, you come from the technical side, and now you have the prominent position in IETF, being a chair of the organization, which actually is not an organization, as I understand. It's just a group of technicians who agree and focus on the technical work of the protocols. So what I've seen in past years, the IETF has really focused on the technical work and has not wanted to touch this wide area of politics or policies or all that stuff. So good engineer doesn't touch that. So And then the Internet society has been kind of voice of the technical side. So has something changed now? Because I see you there, here and there in the meetings, and the I community is more prominent, gives press releases and all that. So has something changed, and why, and how you see this?
Yeah, so it is true, of course, that way back in history, the engineers worked on their own, and not being paid too much attention to, and the things that they worked on at the time were maybe insignificant, and we only realized the significance of those things later. It's kind of under the radar mode of operation. But I also think that the situation has changed. Obviously, the importance of internet has changed. It's a no-brainer, but also some of the technical things have changed. So nowadays, some of the topics that we talk about in the IETF could be like emergency call standards or dynamic allocation of frequencies from a regulator space. And some of those things, I mean, not everything that we do, but some of those actually do require some interaction with, let's say, the policy side of things, regulators, for instance, and governments. So clearly there's change there, and we've seen this in the IETF. So I claim that we do understand the importance of policy side, and it's not that we necessarily want to insert ourselves. I mean, I certainly don't want to insert myself into too many other meetings, but there are some important topics that we feel that are still worthwhile discussing. And one practical example of that, of course, is the IANA discussion. We at the IETF, the engineers, actually do depend on IANA, and its careful management in the future is very, very interesting and important for us and for the internet. So, of course, we're in some of these discussions.
Thanks, Jari. Then Liesl, in my understanding, the U.S. government has for many years been a strong supporter of this multi-stakeholder model, and at least it has been said loud frequently. But then anyway, some people have, at least in the mailing list, added there that, yeah, they are, as long as they still have the final say, which is kind of not agreeing in first hand. So is this some kind of misunderstanding, or what is the U.S. government's position right now? So could you perhaps open that up? Have something really changed in past in this super year, or how you see it?
Thank you for the question, Tara, and good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and not just because it's gorgeous weather. This has been arranged for me for my visit, but well, I think that there have been at least three times in which the U.S. government has sort of crystallized its views on multi-stakeholder internet governance over the past 5 years or so. The first time was in our international strategy for cyberspace, where one of our policy priorities was to promote effective and inclusive structures for internet governance, and specifically to promote and enhance the multi-stakeholder venues for discussion of internet governance. Then again, in the OECD, we were very strong supporters of the internet policy-making principles, which strongly support multi-stakeholder nature of the internet. And then most recently, in our submission to the Net Mundial process, as the Brazilians looked forward to internet governance principles and a roadmap for the future, we were very strong in our view that the multi-stakeholder process was a key component of that. We said that multi-stakeholder groups deserve the significant credit for the internet's growth and dynamism, that multi-stakeholder organizations should continue to evolve alongside the changing technology. And then I guess the fourth one, of course, is our announcement to transition the IANA function from oversight by our Department of Commerce. That was making good on a long time goal of ours to privatize that function, and turning it over to a multi-stakeholder consensus-based process was part of that plan. We felt that the multi-stakeholder organizations have matured in a way that allows that to happen in a productive way, and we look forward to that discussion.
Thanks. Then my next question is actually about ICANN and to Jonne, because you have been actually in the board for many years now, and so I hope the board has a visibility on how the ICANN works. I think at least it should. And so, because the ICANN is actually seen as the example of the multi-stakeholder decision-making globally, and the bottom-up multi-stakeholder model, then the question is how you see it. Is this really working, and how it's working in ICANN, or is the old claim that actually it's run by the staff, is that valid, or is that total nonsense?
Yeah, thank you. I thought you said that we're going to get the easy questions. I'm not sure where that came from, but thank you. And also, I wanted to say to Liesl that I don't know why she's so kind of like taken by the weather that we have here. I told her already yesterday, it's always like this, and you should come in the summer when it's actually warmer. But anyways, coming to the ICANN and how ICANN sees all this and how this multi-stakeholder model is working in ICANN, and ICANN being an example of that. So first I have to make a disclosure. I'm in the ICANN board. I'm actually the liaison from the IETF, so in a way I kind of work for Jari, and I come from the technical side, but as Tero said, the good engineers are not interested in policy stuff, so that most probably makes me a bad engineer. Anyways, in this ICANN is a multi-stakeholder body and has always been that since its creation. There has been a lot of criticism over the years how the ICANN works sometimes, how it sometimes feels it's top down, and sometimes it feels chaotic. But I think that ICANN is actually quite a good example of how you can work in a multi-stakeholder environment, and has been the statement of that for a long time. The community of ICANN is quite diverse, which might make it sometimes look like that it doesn't have one voice, and it shouldn't have one voice. It's basically a collection of different voices that come together to work together, even if they sometimes have different or even opposing views. So in that way, I think that ICANN has actually been quite successful. And as Liesl said, the US government has basically set out this roadmap for privatizing or privatizing ICANN from the conception of ICANN. Though that has taken a little bit longer than originally envisioned, I don't think that the US government or other governments of the world would be as excited to give kind of the stewardship of the ICANN function to the IANA function to ICANN if it wouldn't have proven that it actually the model works quite well. There are of course ways, there are things that can be improved. There is a perception, for instance, that the ICANN and the staff and the board and the process are not very accountable, or that there is a possibility to improve that accountability. And that is also what ICANN is now addressing, in addition to the work that is done for the transition of the stewardship of the IANA function. In parallel to that, though that quite a separate process. So, and that work is done, that process is done in a multi-stakeholder fashion. So I think overall, this is the whole multi-stakeholder model is actually quite new, though that it's actually not as new necessarily as ICANN is. It's not, I think that it wasn't created with ICANN. I think our ETF is actually works in a multi-stakeholder fashion, is quite a bit older than ICANN as an organization. But I think that overall this has worked quite well. The process and the multi-stakeholder model has grown with ICANN over the years and continues to grow to suit also the future needs better. And I think that's the good thing about the model, that it is adaptable and it's something that can easily change as the requirements for that model change. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonne. Then, for you, so because you are the high official in the Finnish government, so and you have been looking at this style of work for some time already. So somehow, am I wrong if I say that the other groups in this multi-stakeholder community have perhaps better adapted to the way of working and the principle, for example, of principle of equal footing, but then the governments. As an example, in ICANN there is the governmental advisory group which holds at least partly closed sessions. In the IGFs there is the ministerial meeting always before the IGF. So is this somehow difficult for the governments to work together with the other groups, or is this just a wrong assumption? And if so, has there been a progress during the past year? Do you see this improves?
Well, I listed at least 3 questions, so I'm trying to address them all. Well, for your first question was if other stakeholders are better adapted than governments. I think yes, and it's in the nature of the whole multi-stakeholder system that the multi-stakeholderism as such gives voice to stakeholder groups that, let's say, from the government perspective in a traditional world, would be consulted in a different manner. So of course it's for governments, for some governments, definitely not for my government, a problem that stakeholder representation is improving, and I'm actually quite proud to be here in the panel. And when you were introducing my fellow panelists, we have a lot of technical and business know-how in Finland. Like all of you guys are involved in internet governance, and I definitely feel that we as Finland are more with all the stakeholders represented than what I would be alone consulting you back home and then traveling to a meeting and giving the government view of things. Your second one was on the nature of the Governmental Advisory Committee, the GAC, and that the GAC holds closed meetings. I think we've improved a lot during my time. I'd say that the general rule is that the meeting is open, and there are only a few sessions where the governments actually do need to just speak among themselves. And if I'm not fully mistaken, the only sessions that were closed at the previous meeting were basically our preparations to meet with other stakeholders, where we actually go through the choreography of how we want the meeting to be run and which issues to be raised. And that's quite natural for governments in such situations to prepare that among themselves only. Your last question was on whether any progress during the past 12 months. I'd like to look back a bit more. I would say that the past 12 months, for example, in ICANN, have been quite challenging for governments, especially on the GTLD program, the implementation of the program. So probably the 12-month period hasn't been the brightest one for the governments, but let's say the past 24 months, there's definitely progress.
Okay, thanks. Now, Tommy, do we get the connection to Yanis?
Let's hope so.
should I sing in the meantime?
Yeah. Let's shut down the microphones then.
Hasn't accepted the invitation yet.
He's in Paris, Latvia.
Seems that he's not able to answer at the moment.
Yeah, maybe you should leave a video message.
What should I say? Shall we try again?
Or should we just go on and try it like in 5
Let's
or
go
10
on
minutes?
and take another try after a few minutes, maybe. So, actually, now I could open this for the whole panel if you have some comments regarding the previous issues what we discussed, the questions are answered by the different parties. So if you strongly disagree with something you colleague said or fully agree on everything, so please, anybody, any comments? Lisa?
Sorry to say I'm not going to strongly disagree with anything, but maybe elaborate just to touch. We introduced the notion of the IGF, or the Internet Governance Forum, and that's certainly a multi-stakeholder venue that the U.S. government has supported, but we're sort of far behind the Finnish government support for the IGF, and I just want to thank you for the commitment that you have shown financially and substantively to support a multi-stakeholder venue where all the stakeholders from around the world can have a very rich conversation in a candid and timely way each year, and in events like this that take place in national and regional IGFs. We think that, we've talked about sort of the technical community's multi-stakeholder venue, and we've talked about the internet functioning multi-stakeholder venue, and the IGF is one place where all of them can get together and talk about the issues of policy that really are the people, whether they're from government or not, are struggling with. And I think the fact that that is a non-negotiating format that allows for candid expression by all is a valuable place. Now, not all governments find it comfortable, I think similar to ICANN, but we encourage them to come and have those conversations, just as we encourage them to come to ICANN and participate in the GAC, because one thing about a multi-stakeholder venue is if you don't show, your voice isn't heard. So we strongly support it. It is we were able to make a financial contribution to the trust fund that supports the Secretariat for it last year, and hope to do again. But again, just want to thank you for your commitment.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else right now? No, full agreement. All right, then let's continue a bit with the Internet Governance Forum. Anyway, it's a pity if we don't get the connections to Yanis, but let's try for a moment without, and then try to call again. As I've been partly involved in the IGF, so I've seen that more or less there is a kind of growing list of expectations and requests to change and advance for IGF. For example, from the working group of the IGF improvements, from the latest one actually was from the Net Mundial meeting. There is a list of issues where what IGF should do to improve itself, etc. And then on the other hand, the IGF, because that is a part of the United Nations process, it has its kind of limitations. So I would like to hear how you see the future of IGF. But let's see if we now get Janis online. Okay, he's back from this half-an-hour meeting, which lasted 50 minutes, but maybe that's normal. Okay, so is there some echo? So, Janis, if you hear us, so we are actually just kind of. Or is he looking at the webcast?
Hello.
Hello, Janis.
Yes, hi.
Hello, this is Tero. So,
Hi, Tero.
great we got it working, at least for a moment.
Yeah, hopefully it will. Can I listen a little bit to the discussion? Not jump in immediately.
Okay, let's do so. So, actually, we were just coming in the issues with Internet Governance Forum, and I was kind of introducing something and going to ask the opinions of the panelists, listing in a way the increasing list of expectations for IGF, let's see, from the working group and from Net Mundial, etc. And telling that, on the other hand, IGF is bound to the rules of United Nations, and in that sense raising the question how the panelists see the future of Internet Governance Forum. Is this multi-stakeholder way of working able to take these improvements and in a way tackle the issues and respond to all these requests? And maybe we start with somebody here, and then Janis, you can jump in as you will. So Jonne was interested to comment, please.
Yeah, thank you, Tero. So I've been following the Internet Governance Forum since its beginning, from the Athens meeting in 2006, and looking at how not only the forum itself, but also how the stakeholders relate to that forum nowadays, it has changed very strongly from the beginning. Originally, people were, all stakeholders basically, were a little bit suspicious of the whole Internet Governance Forum and how that would work, and who would be taking over it, and who would be trying to control that, and so on. And the stakeholders were very detached from each other. So the business stakeholders or private sector, the public sector or the government, and the civil society were very much flocking with their own kind and were suspicious of the other people. As I see this has very much changed. The people have learned to work together, though that it has perhaps been more difficult for some parties than others. It has actually went through the organization quite well, went through the stakeholders, and people have really learned to work together, discuss with each other, and bring out the important issues that have to be discussed about the internet, which is the role of the IGF. In addition, the suspicion against the organization itself has quite much vanished, and nowadays most of the people who were suspicious in the beginning those have become the biggest supporters or even proponents of the IGF in general. And I think that's quite good testament and proof to that the organization works, the model works, and you can work in that, and people can learn to work in that ways. Now it's interesting to see, of course, how this will go forward. We have had this the Internet Governance Forum for a long time now, and it has been fairly stable. I'm very interested to see how it will be developed further and where it will go. But I'm pretty sure that the importance of the IGF will only increase over the years.
Thanks, Jonne. Then Lisa, please.
Thank you, Tero. And hello, Giannis. Well, thank you for joining us. I think that retrospective is very important to have, because people that come to the IGF now don't have that same, for the first time, say, don't have that same historical perspective of how, I think detached is a really good word for the way the stakeholders were, and that has certainly evolved over time and something we shouldn't lose sight of. But that doesn't mean that things can't continue to be improved. And I think one way that is there's several ways to do that, as articulated in the CSTD, or the Commission on Science and Technology for Development's report on improvements to the IGF. And they include things like increasing participation from developing countries, and generally increasing participation by all the stakeholders. But then it also talks about a very important piece of it, which is improving the output of the IGF so that it can be taken, internalized, implemented, and used throughout, around the world and in between IGFs. And I think that is an area that we're still struggling with how to really pinpoint how to make that piece very productive. I'm sure Giannis will talk about some of the discussions we had in Paris last week during the preparatory meeting, so I'll leave that to him. But I just want to say that is I think a very important function of getting the richness of the conversation that takes place there among the stakeholders on very important topics, and then bringing it back in a way that's usable for the community. I think that's where we can go next. Although I just want to put one word of caution out there, in that because it is a UN, it takes place under the auspices of the UN, it does require a renewal from the UN in 2015, and we are strongly supportive of that, have already tried to get it in. So that's a very important sort of international politics move that has to happen in the next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Then Jari, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on something that you said, Tero, earlier. You asked about whether the multi-stakeholder model can evolve IGF in the right way. And I think, well, I'm very optimistic about that, but I just wanted to answer that particular question in a little bit more generic fashion. And I think the answer is, of course it can. That is what works. And I have trouble thinking of any example where something non-multi-stakeholder would have worked for the global internet. So everything that we actually have, ICANN, the engineers at the IETF, the regional internet address systems, all those things work in the multi-stakeholder fashion. And they bring us all the internet that runs there today. Yeah, of course we can, well, at IGF and elsewhere.
Thank you, Jari. And Juuso, please.
Thanks. Easy to agree with a lot of what has been said, but I'd like to point out a few things. First of all, we just talk broadly about the multi-stakeholder model, and I think that let's talk about multi-stakeholder approach. The IGF is a very different alien from ICANN and from IETF. They're all different. So there is no general agreement, in my view, to what is the way of dealing with these issues on a multi-stakeholder basis, but however, we realize that all the stakeholders have to be involved in the decision-making. On the IGF, I'd like to say that I'm really pleased to see that there's a strong support for that, and that's probably one of the things where we are most in agreement in the internet governance ecosystem, is that we need a stronger continued IGF. As Liesl said, however, we seem to make problems for ourselves with the UN system, that we need to renew the mandate every 5 years. So that's really a problem, which then prevents us from developing the funding and the organization, and so we can't really do long-term planning on how to develop the IGF. We all realize that we need the discussion on internet governance has matured, so we need to let the IGF mature as well, but at the same time we put these 5-year periods where we have to look at whether it should be continued or not. But definitely, I think that the IGF is a very, very good example of how multi-stakeholder discussions go, and I believe that the IGF can produce better, stronger outcomes, something out of it, more than just the discussion that we're having now.
Thanks, Juuso. So somehow, as I've been part of this preparatory work for a couple of years, if I reflect what you've been saying and what I've been thinking is that kind of IGF has had a value because the people have learned to talk together, and in a way the process has started to work, started from some kind of silos, and it's not a question anymore. But now for the next 10 years, maybe is it wrong to say that the IGF would need some, let's say, real rethinking, in a way, what are the outcomes and what are the modalities. I think one thing I have seen is that the number of workshop proposals has really increased from the past years, so that, for example, this year there were 220 proposals, where actually we could fit in roughly 100. So definitely there is interest, but I think the process of selecting the workshop proposals and also somehow of the follow of the quality of the workshops and the sessions in IGF should be improved. But then how to do that in the UN environment without a working group fighting for the next 5 years? But maybe this is a kind of question, and maybe we should now give Yannis the floor as a new chairman for the preparatory work. So, Yannis, if you want to jump in.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to join. Sorry, I cannot be with you. My day job retained me in Riga. I wish to be in Helsinki today. So, nevertheless, let me start these brief remarks with a reminder what the multi-stakeholder model is. Now there is a lot of discussions about it, what that really means. Being at the beginning of the WSIS process, I can tell you that the definition is relatively simple. A multi-stakeholder approach is alternative to a purely intergovernmental approach to internet governance issues. So if we look back, what is different 2005 and 2014, the difference is the level of acceptance by the governments, the multi-stakeholder model as the one where internet-related issues, including public policy issues, could be discussed and decisions prepared. More and more governments embrace this multi-stakeholder model, but I must say that not all. And the last Commission Science and Technology for Development meeting showed at what point we still need to progress with the promotion of multi-stakeholder decision-making preparation model, because I do not believe that IGF will become a decision-making body. It was not created as a decision-making body, it was created as a discussion forum, and that has its own advantages. The sort of atmosphere in IGF is very free. There are no taboos. All questions could be discussed. All questions could be raised in a free-floating discussion where everybody can jump in without reference to whose interest he or she may represent during the debate. When it comes to decision-making, immediately questions of representation will come in, and the decision-making will stifle the free atmosphere, and it will become very formal, and the debates will be changed with the tedious negotiation sessions, and we have seen these changes in recent forums. So that said, we certainly need to think how IGF may be sort of advanced and fostered in order to give more input to decision-making process which should take elsewhere. And in this respect, the information exchange between decision-making bodies and IGF should be strengthened. We need to inform those decision-making bodies, whether that is intergovernmental organizations or national governments or technical organizations, what has been discussed, what are the views expressed during the IGF in very proactive manner, and we need to collect information and share that with community, what decisions have been made as a result of discussions at IGF. I think that information exchange and information sharing would dissipate this feeling that nothing happens in IGF is just a talk show. It was created as a talk show, but with a talk show with a purpose to inform decision-making processes where they should take place. I'll stop here and I'm happy to answer questions or engage in further discussion.
Thank you, Janis. So then, if any of the panelists have something to add, or are there burning questions from the audience? Doesn't seem to be so. So maybe we could take a couple of points from the panel still, and then move to the second topic, the INA issue, so that we can also have some time for that. Lisa, you wanted to? Okay, Jonne.
Yeah, just wanted to make something a little bit more concrete. We've talked a lot about multi-stakeholder model and compared that to the intergovernmental model or multilateral model, as it's sometimes called. And it might be sometimes a little bit abstract, that we are discussing about models of making decisions, and but does it really have, and what does it really mean in practice? And I think that it's important to reflect a little bit how Internet has formed and how it's different from, for instance, from the traditional model of telecommunication. So that Internet came kind of as in a sneaky way through the kitchen door to our lives, in a way that it was an academic research network that became commercial, and it was, even in its early stages, it was not considered to be important enough that all operators would, for instance, sell internet service, because they thought the whole network model is something for hippies and not to do real business on. And therefore, the model of the internet grew quite differently than telecommunication, where in telecommunication from early on, the governments were very much involved, unlike the old telecom companies were government monopolies in many regions and in many countries. And basically there the decisions how to connect networks together in telecommunication was done under multilateral agreements. And one of the main things about these multilateral agreements was always to protect the sovereign nation. Whereas the internet came from the grassroots ground up, where the connection model was basically that you want to be connected to everything, and you want this network to be open. It doesn't mean free as free of money, but in the money way, but it free as kind of free flow of information, free flow of packets, and no discrimination as such of different services and so on, as long as they're legal. This model is very unique and has been very unique in the world, and it has come because originally this wasn't considered as being that important as it has grown now. To keep this open nature, to keep the whole world connected and keep internet as an important network or the important network for the whole world, we have to keep it that way. If we start to building like what was said in the opening speech in the beginning of this forum, is basically that what would internet look like if it would have custom declarations and it would have basically borders, it would be quite different. And we wouldn't enjoy the global nature of it anymore. Therefore, that it's important that the decision-making about the future of the Internet stays in the same, under the same principles as the Internet itself, open and inclusive, which means open and inclusive for everybody, all the stakeholders, for the civil society, for the private sector, for the governments, and so on, and also for the Internet technical community. And that is the thing that keeps the Internet open and keeps the Internet as it is, according to the principles as it is today. Of course, the Internet itself evolves technically all of the time.
Thank you, Jonne. All right, so now we have been talking about the multi-stakeholder model in general and some issues regarding the Internet Governance Forum. And I propose we kind of jump to the next subtopic, which is the IANA transition and what's that and so on. And Yanis, if you can stay online and listen and then participate, I think we are more than happy if that's possible. But I would like to start with Jari, because it might be good to know what is this IANA stuff. And so maybe it's best to give the technical expert the possibility to give the elevator speech. What is IANA function? What's this whole mess all about? Please.
So the IANA stuff. Yeah, so IANA, or the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, is a small organization. Currently, it's being performed by ICANN, or it's a function that is being performed by ICANN since the creation of ICANN and probably the foreseeable future. And it's actually really small, and it's kind of interesting because we talk about it here. You've probably seen news articles about it. The U.S. Congress has been, paying a lot of attention. The politicians of the world, 200 governments in the world, are very, very interested in IANA, but it's 11 people. So those 11 people are, they have a lot of oversight from the world. Like everyone's looking at them and wondering, if they do the right thing. And so I'm first of all very glad that I don't work for that organization, because I don't need that much oversight. Anyway, what they actually do is pretty boring. It's a clerical function. They maintain a database, a small database to begin with. And the database contains names and numbers. They contain top-level domain names. Those are the names. And then they contain two types of numbers, the internet addresses. And actually, they only maintain a registry of the top-level assignments to different regional operators, and then the more detailed bookkeeping is elsewhere. And they also, third thing that they maintain is protocol numbers for the IETF. That's my organization, the engineers. So as an example, port 80 above TCP means HTTP or the web. And we need those numbers for the internet to actually be interoperable between different computers. But these are relatively small sets of numbers or databases that they hold. And the other thing is that IANA doesn't actually decide what goes into the databases. So they follow rules, very clear rules, given by those entities who actually decide what the policies are. So in the case of domain names, it's the domain name policy part of ICANN, which is different from IANA. In the case of addresses, it's the regional internet registries, or RIRs, right in Europe. In the case of protocol parameters, it's IETF primarily. So they really focus on this clerical operation. And then I just wanted to briefly mention the transition thing. So the NTIA announced that they will transition their role to the multi-stakeholder community. So this is not about moving IANA anywhere. It's about moving the role of the U.S. government to the multi-stakeholder community, which is something that has been the plans for a long time, actually. And I think many people during this, after this announcement, had been sort of asking, like, what's going to happen with the stewardship role of the U.S. government? How do we implement that in the future? And the thing is that that role is extremely small, or even non-existent in many cases, like what they do for us at the IETF. They basically just check that the INA has done its work right, and even that it's only done in some special cases. So to me, the stewardship role the U.S. government has had, and they've done a wonderful job in this case, is that they have let the multi-stakeholder communities grow and do the kinds of things that they need to do to run the system. So that's really the stewardship that they've done more than any concrete action. And those practices, how we deal with this, have evolved over time. So, for instance, for the IETF, for the protocol parameters part, for the last 15 years since the creation of ICANN, we've created agreements between the two organizations, between IETF and ICANN, service level agreements. We've created RFCs that describe how this model should run. There's hundreds of, if not thousands of RFCs that specify the actual policies on how to make allocations. And it's all done in this open multi-stakeholder rough consensus model. So from our perspective, IANA actually works very, very well. And the transition, the NTIA transition is more about recognizing this fact that it works well than trying to search for, the thing that the U.S. government is doing and then placing that in some new organization. That's really not what we're trying to do. But maybe that's enough.
Okay, thanks. So was I correct, some kind of understanding that you are saying the U.S. government has done very well by actually not doing much of anything, or at least without any interventions on the process?
Right, that's right.
Thanks.
They have stayed out of it and allowed the organizations and the people and the multi-stakeholder community to do what they need to do and make the decisions.
Thank you. Okay, then Liesl, now we have some kind of understanding what this is, and so the U.S. government has made a decision to give this oversight role to some undefined body or non-body. So this looks somehow kind of radical change. So could you enlighten it a bit? Why just now?
Sure, and I really appreciate your giving the more technical view of what IANA is. I think that one of the greatest challenges we have between the technical community and the policymaking community is understanding what the internet is and how it works. So I think that that's a problem generally and improving because of the ability to speak together in forums, but it still remains in some cases. As I said earlier, the decision to transition or announce our transition of our role, as Jari put it, in the IANA function was really driven by the the growing momentum in the multi-stakeholder organizations to evolve and mature. I think it's fair to say that the iStar community's Montevideo statement was kind of a recognition of that and a demonstration of that. And the plan all along was to transition this role. So it just seemed that, as we heard earlier, it's been a very busy year in internet governance and internet institutions activities, and the timing because of all of that seemed perfect to us. And speaking of timing, there's a process that we put in place for making sure that a proposal that came forward was one that was developed in a multi-stakeholder manner and did not include an intergovernmental control. And those are very important things that we'll look to see from a proposal. The contract is up in 2015, but it's not a hard and fast deadline, but it is a time frame. So it seems that the maturity of the system and the discussions that have been taking place over the course of 20 years, really, but in the last 24 months, as perhaps you so articulated, have matured in a way that it seemed an appropriate time.
Thank you. Then Jonne, with your ICANN background, so now we know that actually the responsibility to run the process of defining the new way for this IANA oversight, that has been clearly given to ICANN, which now, as we heard, is actually running the daily operations of the function, have those 11 people. So are you confident that ICANN is capable of being some kind of neutral in running this process? Because I've heard some or read some emails claiming that, okay, yeah, now it's given to ICANN, and naturally the default is that ICANN takes it all, and this is just a kind of theater running some kind of process. So can you convince us that that's not the case?
Yeah, thank you. I just love how you formulate these questions. They're not aggressive at all.
Thanks.
Anyways, so ICANN has not been given the mandate to run this process. ICANN has been given the mandate to facilitate this process. And I think that there is a very important distinction there. So basically, ICANN is the convener, not the one who mandates or tells how this process is run. There have been already basically consultations and discussions in different places how this process should be run. There have been multiple inputs from different parties in that, including from, for instance, from the IETF and the Internet Architecture Board to this process, and those are being taken into account. And the whole idea of this, and which comes also from the requirements from the US government to run this, that this has to be run in a multi-stakeholder fashion. So I'm absolutely certain that I can step up to this and do it in the way that is expected from it. And if ICANN wouldn't do that, it's a multi-stakeholder process, so other people will yell very hard and make sure that we do what we're supposed to do, and we drive this successfully to its goal. This is, of course, one thing that we have to keep in mind is that this is not a top-down process, and this is not something that somebody can just mandate what will be done. And so this will take some time. So though that September 2015 sounds like it's far away, it's most probably closer than we think. And we have our work cut out for us to basically to reach that.
Thank you. Then Juuso, how about Finland? Does Finland have a position on this IANA issue? And then, in a way, should Finland have? Who has stated that if that is existing, or should there be a kind of process how the position of Finland should be generated?
Well, thanks. First of all, yes, we do have a position, and yes, we do have a multi-stakeholder process for preparing that position. Trying to grasp from all the three interventions before me, I agree with Jari that the IANA function has been the IANA has been functioning well, and sort of like my scale of if it's functioning well or not is that the internet downtime for me has been quite low. Honestly, it's working, and it's important economically and otherwise. So you know, kind of like if it's not broken, why fix it? But since we are in a transition process now, I think that we should be all looking for a solution that is as lightweight and as simple as the current one. Unfortunately, I think that whenever you involve many stakeholders, especially governments, things are not simple anymore. Definitely on the Finnish position, we view that the functions are mostly technical, so we don't want to over-politicize them by saying that, okay, the US government is now giving the oversight role away, so other governments need to step in. No, we actually do believe in this multi-stakeholder approach of building a mechanism for the oversight that replaces the previous one. And our position is also that we're definitely not in a hurry with this. So September 2015, I realize, is quite close, and this is a critical issue where I actually do think that the result is more important than the time timeline of work here. On the Finnish position and views of Finland to this process, we will definitely, as government, be an active player, and we will contribute to the work that's being done now here. Nationally, our doors and windows are open at this heat wave, at least, trying to listen to all the stakeholders, and I would definitely welcome a discussion even here right now about what it is. Now you've heard what it is. Let's talk about it. Let's organize a consultation or give us a call. We're open for comments.
Thanks, Juuso. So, in principle, do you plan to open some kind of consultation? Or?
Well, we haven't discussed this yet, whether we would do it. I mean, all the stakeholders who are mostly involved in internet governance, who are here today, and many of them in the panel, know that we are in discussions amongst each other, but maybe we should have a discussion on whether we would actually announce to do a proper national consultation on this. And if we decide to do so, how would then what time frame feed into the global process? And it was said ICANN is facilitating it. The original time frame had mostly ISTAR meetings, but I would assume that they welcome all contributions from all over, from a multi-stakeholder meeting such as this one. Okay, so let's throw the question to the audience. Should there be a discussion in Finland regarding this IANA transition? Or do you trust your government?
Do you trust that guy? So, please, opinions, comments. There are mics. Please, hands up.
Somebody should at least test the mic.
Yeah. Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tommi Kartaavi. About the title of the session, Quo Vadis Internet, there's been a trend lately, or for some time, that more and more governments want to have more control over the internet. Countries like China, Russia, Turkey, you name it, and yes, Australia. This seems to be a growing trend, and people talk about balkanization of the internet. Do you see this as something that will go away, or is it something that's going to keep growing?
Gary, please.
So, of course, it's not going to go away, because the internet is getting more important every day. So everyone's very interested in what's going on and having an effect on it. So, the interest from governments to do things and be involved is growing, not decreasing. Now, whether they do sensible things or silly things, that's another question. And I think that in some cases they will probably do also silly things. But I'm otherwise optimistic that we'll also learn to avoid some of the mistakes that could be done. So I think we will see more attention, but we still need to have a discussion or continuous discussion about the kinds of policies that are applied to the internet, and make sure that we make the right choices, whatever those choices are in the future, or whatever the topics are even.
Jonna, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that question, Tommy. The question is actually quite timely, of course, now that we have seen that many countries are actually restricting their internet access and so on. There's an old saying about the technology of the internet that internet doesn't mind censorship because it routes around it. And that is also a little bit true, though that countries do restrict access to the internet and restrict these access to some of the services on the internet. There are always holes that people are going to go through, even in those situations, even in countries where they do invest considerable resources and money and time to try to try to basically fill those holes and make sure that people don't have access to the whole internet. But as an that's the kind of like what people can do once something has been already restricted. However, it's worrisome that it's still worrisome that the development of restricting the access to the internet is happening in the world. And I think this is actually a testament to that, how important it is that the governance of the internet and the discussions about what is the future of the internet is not just the hands of few, but has to be in the hands of many. And basically this is also important that people are active in their own countries to make sure that this interest to restrict or to follow what happens in the internet and doesn't become unduly, but what we basically fight for the open internet in everybody in our countries at least, and make sure that we don't get into that situation where the internet would be balkanized.
Thanks, Jonne. So actually this is a... Was a question?
Elke Kolehmainen, in response to user's question a little bit earlier, I believe that the open consultation should be held in Finland for two reasons. One of that is that after that we know formally what Finland will be presenting in the meetings, and secondly, particularly since we are aiming at the multi-stakeholder way of working, we should follow that in what we are doing ourselves.
Thank you. So time is flying and the coffee is waiting, or how should we put it? But anyway, as a final question, and maybe you could try to be fairly brief in your comments, I would raise the question really that in a way we've been now talking the governance issues very much in the global scale and the top issues of today, and my question for the panel would be that for the audience, in a way, why should we care? Why should the audience care? Why should the people in Finland be interested in this, which may sound boring, with a lot of acronyms, etc.? Isn't everything working well? So why should we get interested, and why should we get involved? Maybe we should start from in the reverse order, so that user can't do any emailing right now. So please, user, start. Why should we be interested?
Thanks. Caught me by surprise, actually. Yeah, I was writing down my points for the thing. First of all, I think that it's a bit unfortunate that we in Finland are in the good position of being able to take this for a given. There's a free and open internet that is a given. But we who work with internet governance on a daily basis, we see these threats that were already mentioned here before, and basically it's all about all of us. We are all stakeholders. We're all the guys who should care about what the internet is like in the future and contribute to the development of this of the internet. And definitely, I think that for a country such as Finland, who has been traditionally living from exports, free flow of data is also important in our future trade and in the future prosperity of Finland and in the possibility to do business. And as my colleagues from the Ministry of Transport and Communications have stated in their documents and research papers, the share of the internet of the Finnish economy, of the GDP, must be over 10% now. So it's definitely, I mean, it's a cornerstone of our society. So why shouldn't you really bother to participate in the decision making of this critical infrastructure for the future?
Thank you. And Jonne, if you can be brief.
Yeah, let's try. Yes, I think that Juuso has, of course, pointed it out quite accurately. It is something for us all, and we all basically benefit from the open nature of the internet, and that the internet works in the way that we're used to. And of course, that it's also important to us all that how internet evolves. So yes, I think that everybody should be involved, or at least interested in this, and follow it, and make sure that the views that they think are important about the internet, that they are reflected in the discussions, both nationally here in Finland and then internationally when it's appropriate. And I think that the main thing is that, like Juuso said, we have this open internet, we have learned to take it as granted, and we should make sure and work hard that we can keep on using it and take it for granted.
Thank you. Lisa, please.
Again, I think it's hard to take the sort of high-level policy discussions and then answer that question in a very concise way. But I think we did it in the international strategy that we put out, that President Obama issued in 2011, when he said the ability to distribute information efficiently on the internet is at the very core of modern consumer, business, political, scientific, and educational activity. Now, I'm not entirely sure about this, but I imagine that the borders of Finland is not exactly where everybody wants those things to stop. So I think that similar to us, the borderless nature is both a desire and an aspiration. So I think that's why we care.
Thank you. And Jari.
Yeah, so I don't think we here in the panel really, or you guys over there, or the people on the street really care about this stuff so much unless we screw it up somehow, and then we all would suffer from that, so that the export industry and ourselves and our ability to communicate and benefit from the good things that the internet gives us. So that is the key thing, and of course there's some possibilities for screwing up, but I'm very optimistic that we'll do the right things, the world will do the right things. The other thing that I wanted to say is that often in these kinds of discussions with governments and forums of this type, we sort of focus on the internet as or the internet governance as one problem or one thing. But given that it's 10+% of the GDP and so forth, it's actually a huge thing, and then there's many different topics, and they evolve over time. So now we are very focused on, I don't know, names and IANA and all the hot topics this year. Those will evolve in the future, and there'll be other things, and it's important to realize that it might be some specific thing that we care about in the future, and they're not necessarily all conveniently in one place to be discussed by the heads of delegation from government. So actually, a distributed nature of the internet also applies to the internet governance discussions. So we have to be prepared for watching what issues will come towards us in the future.
Thanks, Jari. Okay, now I guess we are run enough overtime, and we should close. Naturally, we can continue the discussion during the coffee break, and I hope it doesn't end even there. So I think we owe great thanks to the panel and the panelists, and also to Yrjö to give us a short form description of what everything happened during the past 12 months. And the special thanks to Liesel, who has come here so far to the north, to the dark and cold, what we always have in Finland. So thanks a lot.
Okay, and a housekeeping issue. This marks the end of the part of the program in English. We will continue at 11 in Finnish. Eli kahvitauko parikymmentä minuuttia ja 11 aikaa jatketaan suomenkielisellä osuudella. Joo.